Now, in the UK, new legislation could see pubs banning customers from discussing topics like transgender rights if landlords feel staff are being harassed under Labor's proposed Workers' Rights Charter. The charter aims to prevent third-party harassment but raises concerns about enforceability in philosophical conversations. Industry experts warn this could limit freedom of expression and turn pubs into battlegrounds for employment lawyers. Additionally, it might also impose significant costs on many of these businesses, with some estimates reaching up to £5 billion annually. Calls for reconsideration of the measures are growing as many fear that they will harm the economy and also job security. Ash, again, this feels like one of those things that's hard to believe it's happening, but how did we get to this point?
Well, I think we see with the Starmer government at the moment a desire. I think there's a real kind of controlling authoritarian streak that goes through that government. Now, sure, you know, many critics would say that, oh, look, these the dangers of these laws are being exaggerated, but you know, the idea of policing pub banter is just seems bizarre. But you know, this is yet another episode in a long line of bizarre things that have been put forward by this government in the UK.
When I was typing for YouTube last night, doing some research about British pubs, the thing that kept coming up is the decline of the English pub, the traditional, beautiful, old building, hundreds, if not thousands of years old in some cases, where people get together at the end of a hard day or at the end of a hard week to catch up and to talk rubbish, which can quite often be great for the brain. Maybe not as many beers, but that can be quite fun too. We have a look at this picture that's been put out of Keir Starmer there. It isn't always like this. Sometimes people like to actually have a bit of fun at the pub and have these conversations. And if they get rowdy, there is an expectation that you're out the door. For the government to intervene in these sorts of things feels a bit get out of our way.
But, well, that's right. But also, this is the government placing the expectation on the employer to do the policing. And so governments are very good at coming up with all of these great ideas about how others can police the behaviour of a third party. It's impractical. Look, I know that there is a lot of laws, I guess, they're actually not designed to be enforced. They're designed to signal an intention, and that's probably more realistically what is happening in this case. But even so...
But what about free speech? Is there not something about free speech when it comes to having an open conversation? And it is so subjective what is offensive, particularly if you're talking about transgender rights. Someone could be saying, I don't believe that transgendered athletes should be playing in women's sports or using a women's bathroom. Having a debate about these conversations, surely there's no better place to do it. And the fact that people are open to debate, does this not send an unintentional signal? We don't want people debating topics, we'll just tell you what to do.
Well, I think we've seen for the past few years that, you know, this particular issue of transgender rights is a very, it's a very contentious issue. There are very sort of very firmly held opinions on either side, and so who is to determine that which side is permissible or not? And this is the problem with I guess any sort of law or regulation that tries to police speech. It's just impossible.
We both have transgender friends, and I think about one of mine who I asked her recently, how do you feel when the topic of transgender is in the news? And she said to me, I just hate it. Just let me live my life, and can politicians stop trying to make me an issue? And it goes to many activists as well in the community who it frustrates people. They don't, and quite often you can find transgender people who have all sorts of political views, of course. They're not all left-wing activists. The conservative ones who maybe are in their 60s or 70s, who are very progressive on a lot of issues, find themselves in that place of stop putting me on the front page.
Yeah, look, I guess I'm not going to sit here and attempt to speak for transgender people. I'm obviously not qualified to do that.
But is the Prime Minister? That's the issue.
This is
bureaucrats.
This is one of the problems with this issue and many other issues, is that an appeal to the mainstream is being killed off by the antics of a small, noisy minority. Now, I guess the idea of the noisy minority is not a new one, but you know, whether it's in Australia, in the UK, or in the US, I guess public acceptance of I guess minorities are being challenged because of a radical, illogical, even crazy, you know, the minority of minority that doesn't actually represent the group, and I think sometimes they just, you know, we saw it during the election in the US. Quite a memorable slogan. Kamala Harris is for they, them. Donald Trump is for you. Now, very simplistic, obviously, but it actually cut through. And so I guess the people running these campaigns, people active in these campaigns, maybe just need to sit back and think, well, what are we trying to achieve here? Are we actually trying to achieve change through greater acceptance, or do we just want to talk amongst ourselves and make us all feel better?
Yeah, well, as I always say, the loudest voice takes me back to 2002 or 3, at the beginning of the Iraq War. There was a Pride March here in Melbourne that I went to, and at the very end of the march, there's a stage, and a lady, very strong-willed lady, gets on stage and says, on behalf of all gays and lesbians, we are opposed to the Iraq War. And I remember thinking at the time, how on earth can you say something like that? But there are people in the community who fight to get to very big voices and big positions that they feel like they speak on behalf of an entire group of people.
They feel like they speak on behalf, and they honestly believe that. They're out of touch. But they honestly believe that they are representing an entire group of people.
And if you celebrate diversity, and we should, you have to therefore, within these communities, understand that there's going to be a diversity of perspective as well.
Yeah, well, as we know, that the celebration of diversity does not extend to diversity of opinion. That's the get out clause in terms of celebrations of diversity.